Welcome to the Amon Carter Museum of American Art. We're excited that you're here today and that you're going to join us for a tour of the highlights of the permanent collection.
As we do our tour, we're going to be moving from gallery to gallery, and we will tell you which gallery we're going to be in, where we're going. We're going to start off in the Legacy Gallery.
Wonderful.
So the Legacy Gallery are the two spots where Frederic Remington and Charlie Russell's work are shown. And they were the basis of the collection that Amon Carter amassed and gave to the city for this wonderful museum. So we're going to start with Frederic Remington, who loved cowboys and loved horses, but he was not a cowboy. He lived in New York State, and he would travel out to Montana or various places and do sketching trips so that he could bring his sketches back and create these great paintings. This is called The Cowboy. It's pretty obvious. But he was an illustrator, and this particular work was done for Scribner's Magazine. And as you can see, like any good illustrator, he creates a picture where your eye is drawn to the subject. And in this case, it's the cowboy on the horse. He hasn't muddied up anything with stuff in the background that might draw your eye to it. Certainly, it's all very realistic of the West, but just a beautiful way to make you look at that cowboy. And that's what they wanted for Scribner's Magazine. He was also a fabulous sculptor. And this is a piece called Bronco Buster. And this, in a smaller size, was his very first sculpture. And then this larger size, which was done in 1909, was actually created after his death from appendicitis. So he never got to see the really gorgeous large size of his work, but he loved sculpture. And this particular piece, as you can see, is very vertical. And can you imagine the physics involved in this, trying to put all the weight of this bronze onto these two tiny little horse feet back here? This piece may be a little familiar to you because it has quite a political history. When it was first created, the Rough Riders bought a piece of the sculpture and gave it to Teddy Roosevelt, who was the president and who they absolutely adored. Later, it was given to Jimmy Carter, and from that time on, every president of the United States has had it in the Oval Office. And I suppose it's because any kind of a guest, international guest, is expecting to see cowboys in the US someplace, so they might as well start with one in the Oval Office. And with every president, including our current president, it has been a stunning example of Frederic Remington's work. Now we're going to go to the next part of the Legacy Gallery, where you'll see Sherry talking about Charlie Russell's work.
Iconic Western artist number 2, Charlie Russell. Now, Charlie is different from Remington in that he did not have formal training in art. He was born with a gift, a talent, and he developed that throughout his life. Now, the other difference is Charlie Russell did want to go west. He did desperately want to be a cowboy, so much so that he left home at the age of 16 and moved to the basin in Montana, the Judith Basin. Now, his parents thought, he'll be home in 6 months, no problem. Well, Charlie will live in the Judith Basin the rest of his life. Now, he's called a cowboy artist because he did become a cowboy. He admits that he wasn't a very good cowboy, but he loved it. He was a night hawk, a night wrangler. He worked on a ranch a bit, and he got to meet different members of Native American communities. He wanted to find out about their histories, their stories. He had great respect for their culture. And all these experiences that he's having since he moved to Montana will become his subjects for his art. Also know he's a great storyteller, so his art is telling a story as well. Now this is Buffalo Hunt number 39 by Charlie Russell. And when you look at it, I think you know what the story is about. We have 3 hunters that are moving in on a group of buffalo. You have a hunter in the back, you have a hunter on the side, and you have a hunter over here where there's a great deal of detail. It's an Indian pony, and the horse has a handprint and the sun design on it. Also, the hunter himself has decorated his arms, his legs. So there's a great deal of detail on this hunter. There's a lot of motion with the buffalo. You can almost sense the panic and the fear and see it in some of their eyes. Now, this is probably the climax because he's getting ready to shoot an arrow, make a kill, hopefully a kill. There is one buffalo that's been hit, but it was not a kill, so we're going to be shooting some more. Now, there's a lot of buffalo pounding. You see in the background, you see the dust kicking up. You see more buffalo down in the Judith Basin. You see Square Butte back here. That's a landmark that you see in a lot of Charlie Russell paintings. All in all, it's a noisy, it attacks all your senses. You can kind of smell the dust and hear the hoofbeats and sense the tension. This is Buffalo Hunt, number 39. Now we're going to move into the landscape gallery, where I promise it will be a little quieter and calmer. Please join us. Welcome to the landscape. Beautiful, serene scene in front of you, created by Thomas Cole. It's called The Hunter's Return. Now, Thomas Cole is considered the father of American landscape, the first American environmentalist in art, and the founder of the Hudson River School of Art. Wow, quite an impact on art. He was concerned about nature. He saw nature as powerful and beautiful and a gift from God. He also saw this land as a gift to people. So you have a conundrum. God is giving us the land, but how do we preserve it and protect it for future generations? That was his concern. When we look at the hunter's return, we see nature in the top half of this landscape. Beautiful, beautiful. He has the light illuminating the mountain. And I want you to remember this mountain for something a little bit later. This beautiful mountain, the light illuminating. You've got the trees pointing up towards the sky on either side. And it's fall, isn't it? Notice the beautiful colors that he's included in the trees. You have water in the background and even a waterfall. A beautiful, perfect scene. Now down below, I call it man-nature. This side, I would call the feminine side. You have the log cabin, very well-made log cabin, smoke curling out. You have the women, domestic bliss. They're baking food out there, the dog's eating some pie. You have another child playing with the dog, holding up a baby. And then the garden, it looks very bountiful, a very good garden. Now on the other side, I would call that the man side. The hunter returns victorious. He's bringing the kill in. Now, down here in between is a bridge, and there's a young boy. Now, did the young boy run out from the log cabin to meet his father and get the gun to bring it back home for him? Or did he go hunting with them and he's just running ahead to see his mother and his family? He's in a point of transition here on the bridge between being a boy and being a man. Just as this painting is in transition between nature, no footprint of man, untouched, and down here we definitely see the footprint of man. You see all the stumps from the trees that have been chopped down. You have to build the log cabin and to make this bridge and that garden. But to me, sometimes they look like tombstones because this is a part of nature that's been taken and is gone. So again, that problem, how do you get resources for for your expanding population, your settlement, and you maintain the beauty that God has given us in nature. It's a problem still today. Now we're going to go into another gallery, and it's called American Roots. We'll join you over there.
Does this peak look familiar to you? That's because Thomas Cole used it in many of his landscape paintings. You saw it in The Hunter's Return, and now you're seeing it in the Garden of Eden. So this same mountain, which is part of the White Mountain Range in New Hampshire, has traveled all over the world and beyond. This particular mountain is not all that tall. It's less than 3,500 feet, but it has a very rugged face to it, and it has that little kind of curlicue at the top. And I think that's why Cole loved using it, and he did use it very often. So that's your little secret to remember. When you see a Thomas Cole painting, does it have this peak from the White Mountain Range? Next on our tour is a stop at Opulence and the Everyday. Can't wait to see that.
Mary Cassatt, perhaps the most influential and important artist in the 19th century. She spent her life fighting against traditional views of art and the traditional roles of women in society. Born into a wealthy family, Mary went to school in Paris. In schools in Paris, she could take classes and instructions that were not available to her in America because she was a woman. She did quite well in Paris. She showed with the Paris Salon 3 times, but she wasn't satisfied with her art. Something was missing. And then her world turned upside down when she met the French Impressionist Degas. Degas will become her mentor, her friend for life, her collaborator, and he will introduce her to the Impressionists that were living in Paris. Now, Mary Cassatt will be the only American to exhibit with the Impressionists and one of several women that exhibit as well. This painting we're looking at is unique in that it's distemper. Only 2 paintings that we know of were made by Mary Cassatt, and we have one of them. Now, distemper is water and paint mixed with a thickening agent such as glue. Now, the problems are it dries very quickly. You have to use very loose, quick brush strokes, which you can see. Now, another thing you probably noticed right away is the vertical formatting and also the extreme foreshortening that she's given you and extreme cropping. Notice the cropping. The lighting coming down on the subject is lovely, but the subject is unique. Mary Cassatt felt there was a void in art depicting women and children, showing them doing everyday activities, having normal days, a woman playing with her child, a woman sitting and reading, a woman sitting down in a chair. This woman is pulling her skirt and preparing to sit down, a normal activity she probably has several times a day. Now, the colors probably grabbed your attention. This green is almost electric. It's kind of, I love it. But you have green zones. It's not consistent all the way across, probably because of the distemper. So you have these green zones. But a beautiful color, a beautiful harmony with this red rust in the rug, up in her fan, over to her necklace, and then you see it in the print in the chair. You may think there's a Japanese influence here in the fan and the chair, and there could be, because she was a big fan of Japanese prints. This is a beautiful painting. Woman standing, holding a fan. A woman doing an activity she'd do every day. It's beautiful. In this gallery, we have opulence and everyday activity. We've seen the everyday, but stay in this gallery and we'll go look at the opulence.
Just look at this enormous painting. This is by John Singer Sargent, and it is of the Shakespearean actor Edwin Booth. Now, it's said that Sargent only painted important men and beautiful women. Edwin Booth certainly was an important man. He was probably the best-known actor of the period, and he founded a club called the Players Club in New York City. And this painting was commissioned by the club of Sargent to hang over a fireplace. Can you imagine what the size of that fireplace and the height of those ceilings had to be? He has portrayed Booth in a very unusual situation. He's kind of in the shadows, but kind of coming into the light. He's wearing street clothes, and he's got a very casual stance, and yet his face is so alive, so intent. And it's almost as though he might be thinking about a part or how he's going to create a role on the stage. Edwin Booth was probably outshadowed by his brother, a name that most of us know, John Wilkes Booth, who was the assassin of Abraham Lincoln. And that happened on April 15th, 1865. And from that time on, Edwin Booth had a hard time with his career of wanting to perform. He really felt like there was just no more magic in his name. And then a most unusual thing happened. He was on a crowded railroad platform in Jersey City, New Jersey, and it was rush hour. And there were people all around him, and there was a young man who was trying to board the train, who, as he began to step from the platform into the railroad car, began to slip, and a hand reached out and grabbed him. That hand was Edwin Booth, and that boy was Robert Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's son. So just one more example of the wonderful history lesson that we receive at the Amon Carter Museum.
Swimming by Thomas Eakins, one of the leaders in the realism movement in America. Now, he was born in Philadelphia and attended the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts and also the nearby Jefferson Medical College, where he went to lectures and autopsies. He then traveled to Europe to study classical art, and when he returned to Philadelphia, he got a job at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. Now, he will teach art, and he believes that the body, the human body, is the foundation for art. So in his classes, in his curriculum, the nude was the centerpiece. In men's classes and women's classes. The women's classes, though, the nude model would have a little loincloth of some sort draped around him. Now, he also worked with photography. That was another tool he used, the lantern slides, so that he could put it up on his canvas to accurately show the movement of the human body. Now, he will get a commission from a Mr. Coates, who was the chairman of the Curriculum and Instruction Committee. Eakins thought this was his opportunity to show his brilliance in art and how effective he was creating the human body. This is the painting he created, Swimming, considered a masterpiece today. Now let's look at swimming. We have 6 swimmers. We have one here, we have one over here. Now notice this one is moving towards this swimmer, and this one's coming up out of the water onto the rock. You see this big rock jutting out into the water. This swimmer up here is getting ready to stand up. This one is standing up, and this one is diving. You've probably already seen the perfect triangle. Everything outside that, it's not as clear, not as sharp, because the focus is on these swimmers. Even the background with the trees and the bushes being dark helps you see these figures clearly. He was excited, but Mr. Coates refused it. He said, I can't accept that. Where your signature should be, there you are. That's you, that's your dog, Harry. And I recognize all these swimmers. They're students in your class. Plus, it's graphic nudity. And I feel it's just very inappropriate, so it was refused. Eakins will take the painting. He will not be fired at this point, but he'll take the painting, and it will become part of his collection at his home. It won't be sold for quite some time. Now people ask, how did this painting, this masterpiece by Thomas Eakins of the human figure and landscape end up in Fort Worth, Texas? Well, there was a group of women in 1925 with some money to buy art for the Fort Worth Art Museum. Now, they didn't have a lot of money, but they were going through brochures and they found this painting listed. Well, it was created, some time ago, 1880s, it's 1925, as they're reading the material. I think we should offer $700. That's what we've been told. Whatever the amount was, it was the steal of the century, and they bought this painting. The Fort Worth Museum of Art morphs into the Modern Art Museum. The Modern Art Museum says, this is not in our venue. Amon Carter says, it's in our venue, and we purchased it in 1990, and it came to our collection. Know that this frame is original. The ladies did a very good job when they purchased it.
This lithograph is a fairly new acquisition for the Amon Carter Museum, and it may not be on display because it's a work on paper. There's a time limit to how much light works on paper can have. So it may not be here, but I'm so glad that we were able to include it in this video so that you know more about this remarkable young artist. This work is by Toyin Oji Odutola, and it's a lithograph, not a painting. Most of what we've been talking about today are paintings, but this is a lithograph, which is a printing process taken from stone. And it was done at the Tamarind Institute by Oji Odutola. And the other thing you need to know is that she is a living artist. She was born in 1985, and she was born in Nigeria, but came to the United States, where her father was a professor at Berkeley and then at the University of Alabama at Huntsville. So she has a real connection with Alabama, and this work shows a beautiful portrait of her brother, and the title is Birmingham, which of course is in Alabama. Oji Odutola was first known for her works on paper that really involved using a ballpoint pen in making this incredible skin tone that is just so gorgeous, such depth, such luminosity, that it's hard to imagine that someone could do that with a ballpoint pen and that someone could do it with the lithography process. But she has done it gorgeously, and one of the things that makes this work fit so beautifully in the opulence of the everyday gallery is because it shows two sides of opulence and the everyday, in that this gold around the edges of an everyday undershirt is gold leaf. Just as the Gilded Age, all these people, architects, artists were using gold leaf on everything, Oji Odutola has used it on this undershirt to give it an opulence and, again, a luminosity. Now, the skin tone is what you're really initially interested in, I imagine, certainly what interested me. And I want to read you just one thing that she has written about how she views skin. When I draw the skin of my subjects, I really want people to travel through them. Skin is the geography I travel to discover each person's story. The story of this is a story of love, I think. You can see how close she is to her brother and what a beautiful work of art it is, and we're so fortunate to have it. We're now going to move to the mezzanine, where you're going to see art of the 20th century.
We are in the Make It New gallery, or Making It New, which is appropriate for what we're going to talk about now. This is a new acquisition from Japanese-American artist Ruth Asawa. This is a sculpture, a spatial sculpture. You may think, no, it's not a sculpture, it's hanging. It looks light and airy. No, it's not made out of granite, it's made out of steel wire, but it's spatial sculpture. What you've got is steel wire that has been, with a crochet stitch, created into these different orbs. Now, when you look at it, look at the shadows. Not only did she want to have a sculpture that was made out of material, the steel wire, and we'll talk about how she came up with that later, but also she wanted it transparent. She wanted you to be able to look through and see it. And I love the lighting in the gallery because you can see reflected through onto the walls behind and below these shadows, these designs. And it is light and airy, so if it moves a little, you might see these forms dancing together a little bit. So spatial sculpture, but it's also considered sometimes biomorphic sculpture because you see maybe a seed pod in here or maybe an embryo of some sort in here. Now, Ruth Asawa fell in love with art. Unfortunately, she was in an internment camp. She was Japanese American. Her family was put in internment camp. And there were 3 Disney illustrators there who worked with her and taught her art. And she loved it. And from there, she would move on. Once the war was over and her family was free, she moved on to Black Mountain College in North Carolina. Now, this college was for creative, it was innovative art. You could pick your curriculum, what projects you want to do. She went to Mexico on a field trip, and she saw some women carrying wire baskets with eggs and food in them and was intrigued. Then she thought, well, how can I create that? She asked the women, and they showed her how. She learned how to do the wire into baskets. At Black Mountain, she knew she loved art from when she first was taught art under difficult circumstances. But in Black Mountain, she now knew, yes, I do want to be an artist. She took the theory back of the wire basket and the crochet stitch, and she created at Black Mountain several baskets of her own. And this is going to develop and develop into these beautiful sculptures that we have today. She liked them in the installations. You might see pictures of 3 and 4 of them hung together with different shapes. Now, ours is very unique, and I'm going to read it, so make sure I don't mess it up. This is a signature form within a form, hanging orb works. Now, unfortunately, given all the creativity and all the beautiful sculptures that she did not receive the recognition she should have. She was active in her community, public art in San Francisco, but she didn't achieve the fame she should have. Now she's achieving it. The U.S. Postal Service has issued stamps in her honor. You can buy them now.
This piece is a collage of driftwood and found objects, all wood, and it's called New England Landscape 2 by the artist George Morrison. Morrison has taken all of these different pieces and jammed them together. Some have red paint behind them, and what makes it interesting, though, is the longer you look at it, the more you begin to see a landscape. Do you see the horizon line? Take a look at this piece. Doesn't that look kind of like either a grove of trees or maybe it's a mountain? And up here, is that the sun setting or is it the moon coming up? Is this a cloud? You can look at all these different pieces of wood and try to imagine, number one, where they're from, and then try to imagine why he's placed them in these different places to make New England landscape. George Morrison grew up, he happened to be a Native American, and he grew up on the shores of Lake Superior in Minnesota. He came to New York in the 1950s, and he was a very well accepted artist in a time where artists were trying all kinds of things. It was when abstract expressionism was growing strong, and he tried that. He tried a number of different things. I'm so glad the museum has this particular piece because it is such a compliment to the work that we have in landscape, and also a compliment that we would have a work of an artist who did not want to be known as an Indian artist, but as an artist who happened to be an Indian. Now we're going to go to the gallery that you probably entered as you came into the museum. It's our main gallery on the first floor.
Welcome to a gorgeous painting called Red Canvas. And I bet without saying, you know who the artist is. The artist is Georgia O'Keeffe. Now, the flower paintings are probably her most popular. Most people recognize them and associate her with these paintings. But even though she created over 2,000 works of art, it's the 200 flower paintings that most people think about when they think of Georgia O'Keeffe. Now, she knew after high school she wanted to be an artist and was a little disillusioned with classes until she went to a class with an instructor named Dow. He said, don't just copy other art. What you need to do is create your own design, come up with your own inspiration, and then put your own personal style on it. And Georgia O'Keeffe will do that. We do have 6 other paintings of Georgia O'Keeffe and watercolors in this museum. Now, Georgia O'Keeffe went to New York in 1918 and met Alfred Stieglitz. He would become an important part of her life. They will marry in 1924. He will be her photographer, her business manager, her art dealer. He would be very important in her life. Now, one thing they both loved was going to the Stieglitz home at Lake George in Upper New York. There you found all these beautiful gardens with flowers. Supposedly, her husband said to her, you know, still lifes are selling very well. And she thought and said, well, I can do still life, but as Dow taught me, I'll do my own design. I'll use my own imagination and inspiration and put my personal style on it. She loved the flowers, but she said most people walk by them so quickly they don't really look at them. It takes time to really look and study a flower. And I'm going to paint the flower the way I see it in nature. And then I'm going to enlarge it so much that people will have to stop and look and examine it. She said, just like making a friend takes time, looking at a flower takes time too. Now, this beautiful example of the still life she created, you'll notice the vibrant red. Did you notice the color just kind of vibrating on the canvas? And the variations in the color. The petals are portrayed exactly as they are in nature. She, of course, has it expanded all the way out to the end. And the variations in color are amazing, aren't they? The way they vibrate in the color and the reds. Now, Georgia O'Keeffe was asked, why don't you sign your paintings? And her response was, if you look at my art, you should know who the artist is. And I think you did when we started, didn't you?
Now, just in case you're wondering who the artist is of this particular painting, he made it quite easy for us because he's incorporated his name as one of the elements of the painting. The artist's name is Stuart Davis, and the painting is called Blips and Ifs. Now, if you know anything about radar, you'll know that blips are what move across and that you can see them on the radar screen, and ifs are the intermediate frequencies. Not quite sure why he named the painting Blips and Ifs, but it's a wonderful, memorable title. What you will recognize in the painting is the fact that he was very fond of jazz. And it almost dances with a jazz beat as you see these primary colors, very bright, interesting colors. And he has taken a lot of boxes and ads and all kinds of printed materials. I heard once that he threw them on the floor and then would start painting in the design that they just happened to land in. Don't know that that's true. This particular painting has an interesting history with the museum. When Ruth Carter Stevenson became the director of the board and began the collection of the museum that went beyond her father's initial Remington and Russell collection, this was the very first painting that she bought. It was done by Stuart Davis in 1963. Now, it's also the youngest painting of the collection, we believe. But when she bought this, can you imagine the message that that sent? Here was Amon Carter's very wonderful collection of Western art, and the first addition to the new museum was this particular piece. People must have just wondered what was going on. But Mrs. Stevenson had it in her head that she was going to enlarge the collection so that it was not just going to be a collection of Western art, but that it would be a collection of American art. And could there be a better example than Stuart Davis's work? We're fortunate to have a large collection of Davis's work. There are more than 56 pieces in the collection, and 6 of them are oil paintings. So when you enter the museum, take a look to your left, and you'll see blips and ifs to welcome you.
Thank you for joining us today on our tour of the highlights of the permanent collection. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you learned a little bit, and that one of the things you learned is that you want to come back to the museum and visit some more. Thanks for coming.